Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments section, and subscribe to the channel to stay updated with our latest stories. Sophia had everything she thought she wanted, at least on the surface. A charming suburban home, a dependable husband James, who never forgot to refill her gas tank, and the kind of quiet, steady life others envied. But beneath the polished exterior of their 12-year marriage, a strange emptiness had begun to take root. It wasn't that James was unkind or inattentive. In fact, his predictability was part of the appeal in the beginning. But somewhere along the years, between routine dinners and silent Sunday mornings, their love had turned into a partnership of logistics. Conversations revolved around bills and calendars. Passion had become a memory, intimacy reduced to routine. Sophia often found herself lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering when they had stopped really seeing each other. She still loved James, yes, but was love supposed to feel so muted? The unsettling thought clawed at her more frequently. Was this what forever looked like? Safe, yes, but was it alive? She wasn't chasing drama, nor was she unhappy. But a question she couldn't yet articulate had begun whispering in the back of her mind. And the most dangerous thing about that question? It wasn't loud. It was quiet, patient, waiting. It began innocently, just a lazy scroll through her phone one evening while James was in the kitchen, washing dishes with the same rhythm he had followed for years. Sophia wasn't looking for anything, really. Just a momentary escape from the dull hum of routine. But then she stumbled across an article that read, "Does curiosity ever justify the risk?" A silly headline, really. But the question hit her harder than she expected. She clicked. She read. And with each line, something shifted within her. It wasn't about the topic itself, it was about the reminder that there was a world beyond her safe little bubble. A world of questions unanswered, of sensations unexplored, of parts of herself long dormant. She remembered the way James used to look at her in the early years, hungry, mesmerized. Now, his gaze barely lingered. Now she was the keeper of the calendar, the cook, the reliable presence in his life, but not the woman he once couldn't keep his hands off. As the article scrolled to its end, her heart was pounding with something she hadn't felt in years, a spark of hunger, not just for passion, but for discovery. Not for another man, not yet, but for herself. The version of Sophia who still wondered, still craved, still felt. She closed her phone and exhaled deeply, pretending nothing had changed. But it had. Something had woken up inside her. And once awakened, curiosity doesn't simply go back to sleep. It waits. It watches. It wants. The first time Sophia agreed to meet Liam, it felt like stepping into someone else's life, a stranger's shoes, a stranger's thrill. She had told James she was meeting a friend from yoga, a harmless white lie that rolled off her tongue smoother than it should have. Her heart pounded the entire drive to the cafe they'd chosen, somewhere halfway between their worlds, tucked discreetly off a side street neither of them frequented. When she walked in, Liam was already there, casually sipping his coffee, his expression calm but eyes burning with a spark that made her breath catch. He stood when he saw her, smiled like he already knew her, like this wasn't their first time meeting, but their 100th. They talked for hours, far longer than she'd planned. He didn't ask her to stay. He didn't need to. Every word he spoke pulled her in deeper, unraveling pieces of her she hadn't realized were still alive. When he reached across the table and brushed her hand, it was nothing, just fingers touching, but it felt like electricity arcing straight through her ribs. She should have pulled away. Instead, she let her hand linger. Driving home, the silence in the car felt deafening. She looked at her reflection in the rearview mirror, searching for traces of the woman she had been that morning. But something had shifted. This wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was connection. Dangerous, intoxicating, and entirely too real. Sophia knew, deep down, that she had crossed a line. And yet, she couldn't bring herself to regret it. Sophia told herself it would end after that first meeting. One moment of indulgence, of harmless connection, and then she'd walk away. But days passed, and Liam's presence lingered like a scent she couldn't wash off. His texts were infrequent but perfectly timed, never clingy, never intrusive, just enough to remind her of how alive she'd felt with him. "Thinking of you," he wrote once. Simple. Devastating. She found herself smiling at her phone when James wasn't looking, laughing at memories that didn't belong to her marriage. The line between right and wrong blurred with every secret thought, every skipped heartbeat. One rainy afternoon, Liam suggested they meet again. Just to talk, he promised. And Sophia believed him, wanted to believe him. She wore her favorite sweater, applied her lipstick with trembling hands, told James she had errands to run. When she walked into the cozy wine bar, the air thick with the scent of cloves and red velvet, Liam was waiting with 2 glasses already poured. Their conversation was softer this time, more personal, vulnerable. She told him things she hadn't even told her husband, about the loneliness that crept in at night, the aching desire to feel seen, desired, chosen. When he brushed her cheek with the back of his hand, she closed her eyes, not in fear, but in surrender. They didn't kiss, not yet. But the silence between them spoke louder than any touch. Something inside her had cracked open. She had let Liam in. And part of her didn't want to close that door. Sophia sat at the edge of her bed that night, James already asleep beside her, his breath slow and steady in the dark. But she couldn't sleep, not with Liam's voice echoing in her mind, the way he had looked at her across the table, like she was the only person who mattered in the world. It had been just conversation, just glances. But it felt like more. Her phone buzzed quietly on the nightstand. "Still thinking about you," Liam had written. That one message unraveled her resolve. She stared at it for minutes, her fingers hovering over the screen, torn between the woman she had been and the one she was becoming. A reply sat on the tip of her tongue, unsent. The next morning she went through the motions, packing James's lunch, folding laundry, watering the garden, each act carefully performed, masking the storm within. The guilt was there, heavy and constant, but it came with an equally powerful ache. An ache for the version of herself she'd forgotten. The Sophia who laughed too loudly, who craved deep conversations, who wanted to be touched like she mattered. With James, the rhythm of their marriage was comfortable but hollow, their love a well-worn path lacking wonder. Liam represented danger, but also possibility. Not just for something illicit, but for rediscovery. Sophia wasn't ready to end her marriage. But she also wasn't ready to give up the part of herself that had finally woken up. And so she let the silence between her and Liam grow deeper, more magnetic, until silence alone wasn't enough. Sophia knew she was drifting, yet she let herself go further. Each encounter with Liam blurred the line she'd sworn never to cross. At first, they met for coffee, public, safe, easily explained to James as errands or a spontaneous lunch with a friend. But it wasn't just coffee anymore. It was the way Liam leaned in when she spoke, how he remembered the tiniest things she mentioned, her love of old jazz, the scar on her wrist from childhood. James hadn't asked her about her day in months, maybe years. With Liam, her words didn't just float into space, they landed. And with every conversation, every laugh, every shared look too heavy with meaning, she stepped closer to a truth she was no longer afraid to feel, she wanted more.
One rainy afternoon, the illusion of innocence shattered.
They sat in Liam's car, parked beneath the skeletal arms of a leafless tree. Silence stretched between them, taut and electric. She reached for her seatbelt, ready to leave, to maintain the boundary she had so carefully kept. But his hand found hers. "Don't go," he said, his voice a whisper, more plea than command. She turned to him, breath held, heart racing. The air crackled. He leaned in. She didn't stop him. When their lips met, the world outside the fogged windows ceased to exist. In that kiss lived everything she'd buried, desire, longing, the craving to feel wanted again. And though it lasted only moments, it would ripple through everything that followed, a secret now written on her skin. Sophia had always believed she could control it, compartmentalize her life so cleanly that the chaos never spilled over. With Liam, she told herself it was just a spark, a fleeting fantasy, a little storm contained in a teacup. But desire doesn't ask for permission. It demands. It erodes. And soon, Sophia found herself living in parallel worlds. By day, she was the picture-perfect wife, folding James's laundry, laughing at his work stories, planning weekend meals. But by night, she'd lie awake, heart pounding, eyes wide in the dark as she replayed every stolen moment with Liam. Every brush of his fingers, every breathless kiss. It wasn't guilt that haunted her the most, it was how alive she felt in his arms. She became skilled at the choreography of deception. A new blouse here, a casual mention of an old friend there. Her phone always face down.
Heure 1000 juste wide 9.
James didn't notice. Or maybe he didn't want to. He was busy, tired, satisfied with the surface of things. Sophia, however, had ventured too deep. She could still hear Liam's voice in her head, "You can't live two lives forever." But she tried. She tried because one life made her feel safe, and the other made her feel seen. But even as she walked through her house, her marriage, her well-kept routines, something in her began to shift. The weight of the lie grew heavier, not because she regretted what she was doing, but because she was starting to realize she could no longer imagine her life without him. It was a Sunday morning like any other, sunlight pouring through the kitchen window, the smell of fresh coffee filling the air, James humming softly as he flipped pancakes in his favorite worn t-shirt. But to Sophia, it all felt like a cruel contrast to the storm inside her. Just hours earlier, she had been wrapped in Liam's arms, breathless and tangled in sheets that didn't belong to her marriage. Now, watching James pour syrup with such casual warmth, she wanted to scream. The guilt clawed at her, whispering that she was a monster, that she didn't deserve the comfort of this kitchen or the man who still looked at her like she was his entire world. And yet when he leaned in to kiss her forehead, her skin flinched, not from disgust, but from the unbearable pressure of what she was hiding. She watched his face, every line she once knew by heart, and wondered, how long could she keep lying to the man who trusted her so completely? Was it love if she could still look him in the eyes after betraying him? Or was it something else now, a performance perfected by guilt and fear? Sophia couldn't decide which was worse, that she felt sorry for what she had done, or that a part of her didn't. She carried the secret like a second skin, one Liam had helped her slip into. But now, with every kind smile from James, every soft word, that skin began to suffocate her. And she didn't know how to take it off. Sophia tried to return to normal, whatever that meant now. She smiled at James when he got home, laughed at his dry jokes, and tucked herself beside him at night like nothing had changed. But something had. Everything had. The memory of Liam lingered in the corners of her mind like perfume clinging to a scarf, familiar, dangerous, inescapable. She had told herself it was over, that she had made a choice, and that choice was James. But walking away from Liam hadn't made the feelings disappear. If anything, they had taken root deeper, turning her days into a blur of distraction and her nights into haunted silences. The guilt hadn't vanished, it had simply shifted, settling into her bones like winter cold. She would catch herself staring at James too long, wondering if he saw it, if he noticed the way her affection was more careful now, like she was trying to make up for something she couldn't confess. Every time he touched her, a part of her braced, waiting for the shame to ease, but it never did. It only grew. And the worst part? Sometimes, in the quiet moments, when James's hand brushed hers or he kissed her goodnight, she thought of Liam. Not because she missed the danger, but because she missed feeling desired. Sophia wasn't sure who she was anymore. A faithful wife? A liar? Both? Neither? She had everything she thought she wanted. A loving husband. A stable life. But deep down, she was still holding her breath, waiting for the cost of her choices to catch up. The unraveling didn't come with a fight. It came in the quiet, in the way James watched her too closely one evening over dinner, his fork paused mid-air. "You've been distant," he said, voice low, careful. Sophia's heart stumbled. She looked up, startled by how much he already seemed to know without knowing anything at all. She opened her mouth to offer a lie, a soft, believable excuse about work, stress, hormones, but the words tangled in her throat. James leaned back, his eyes filled with a mixture of concern and something else, doubt, maybe even fear. "Is there something you're not telling me?" The question hung there, thick and sharp, slicing through the air between them. And in that moment, Sophia felt the walls she had so carefully built begin to crack. She couldn't tell him. Not about Liam. Not about the nights she had slipped away in mind and in body. But her silence was louder than any confession. James didn't push. He simply nodded, like some unspoken truth had passed between them. Like he already knew. That night, he didn't touch her when they lay in bed. Didn't curl around her the way he usually did. And she didn't reach for him either. She stared at the ceiling, replaying every step that had led her here, one choice after another, all dressed in denial. The guilt was a constant hum now, vibrating beneath her skin. She had wanted answers. She had wanted to feel alive. But now, all she felt was the slow, inevitable decay of trust. Sophia sat alone at the cafe where she and Liam had once met in secret, the scent of espresso and burnt sugar lingering in the air like ghosts of moments past. It was her idea to meet here, one final conversation before she severed what she should have never started. Liam walked in, the late afternoon sun casting a golden hue over his face, softening the edge of the man who had once set her blood on fire. He smiled faintly as he sat down, but there was a heaviness in his posture, as if he already knew what she was about to say. "I can't keep doing this," Sophia began, her voice barely above a whisper.
Ishos James.
"I have to fix my marriage." Liam leaned back, expression unreadable, then nodded slowly. "I figured. You've been gone for a while now, even when you were here." Her eyes stung. She didn't expect it to hurt so much. She had come prepared to end things, to reclaim her life, her husband, her sanity. But as Liam reached across the table and gently brushed her hand with his fingertips, she realized just how deeply she had let herself fall. "You changed something in me," she confessed. "And you woke something in me," he replied. "But I was never meant to keep you, was I?" She looked away, tears slipping free.
No.
They sat in silence, two people bound by an intensity they could no longer carry. And when she finally stood to leave, Sophia didn't look back. Back at home, Sophia walked through the front door as if she were entering a different world, one she had almost lost. The warmth of familiar walls, the gentle clutter of shared memories, the scent of James's cologne lingering in the air, it all felt painfully beautiful now. James was sitting on the couch, reading, but he looked up the moment she stepped inside. Their eyes met, and for a second, neither of them spoke. There was so much to say, yet no perfect words to say it. She crossed the room and sat beside him, their knees touching. "I ended it," she said simply, her voice steady despite the ache in her chest. James didn't react at first. He set his book down, studying her face. "Why?" he asked. "Because you love me, or because you feel guilty?" Sophia exhaled slowly. "Because I finally realized what I stood to lose. Because I forgot for a while how good we really had it. And because I do love you, James. Even when I felt lost, that part of me never changed." James looked away, his jaw clenched with the weight of betrayal, but also with the struggle of hope. "I don't know how to forgive you," he admitted. "But I want to try." She reached for his hand, threading her fingers through his. "Then let's start there." It wasn't redemption, not yet. But in that quiet, trembling moment, Sophia saw the faint outline of a second chance, and this time she intended to fight for it. Months passed and Sophia and James cautiously began the work of rebuilding what had been fractured, not only between them, but within themselves. Therapy sessions became a routine, not just to air grievances, but to rediscover each other, to ask questions they hadn't dared before. There were nights when James would wake in a cold sweat, the memory of her betrayal etched deep in his mind. And there were mornings when Sophia, standing over the sink, would stare at her reflection and wonder how she'd let herself get so far from the woman she once was. But slowly, their love found a new rhythm. It wasn't the naive, untouched kind they once shared, it was something scarred, weathered, and more honest. Sophia stopped looking for escape in the form of another man, and instead, began uncovering the layers of herself she had forgotten. She started painting again, filled the house with color, music, and a softness James hadn't seen in years. He too changed. He became more emotionally present, asking deeper questions, holding her longer at night, not because he didn't trust her, but because he wanted to connect again. Then one evening, over dinner, he reached across the table and said, "I think I'm finally ready to forgive you." Her breath caught, tears brimming in her eyes. Forgiveness didn't erase the past, but it opened the door to the future. And as they sat there, fingers intertwined, Sophia realized that sometimes, the most powerful kind of love isn't the one that never falters, but the one that chooses to stay. In today's fast-paced world, where distractions and temptations are only a click away, emotional disconnection can silently creep into even the strongest relationships. The story of Sophia and James reminds us that curiosity, left unchecked, can become a dangerous escape from facing real issues. If you find yourself feeling unfulfilled or restless, don't bury it or seek answers elsewhere, communicate. Talk openly with your partner. Relationships thrive on honesty, vulnerability, and effort. True intimacy isn't just physical, it's emotional presence. Instead of seeking excitement outside, rediscover each other inside your own life. Repairing love is hard, but it's possible, and always worth fighting for.